So right now, I want to say as of, I guess it was yesterday, we are up to 551 members who are actually receiving our newsletters, again, connected with us on social media, again, LinkedIn. So the numbers keep growing as far goes the interest. We actually have been active, of course, more than 1,500 days and have attended more than 45 events that we've been present. So things continue to grow, no days off. Right now for the 2024 and 2025 year. Happy to say that we are pretty much locked in, and not each and every one of to a lot of new event partners. So everything from Legion World, which is our founding partnership that we have there, along with LeadsCon. And then of course we have several from, if it is the solar campaigns to, again, different card expos, SBS, we're dealing with gaming, things of that nature. So we have solidified that our partnerships with them that allow us to have discounted cost to attend their events are still present. So we're extremely happy about that. We will be presenting and showing everybody this at the summit so that you have the ability to be able to factor into your calendar and plan appropriately so that you could attend each and every one if that is your desire. So again, so right now I think we're up to about 17 now. So the relationships continue to grow. And these are some large organizations, as we know. For example, one of them, they are giving us discounted tickets that the ticket itself is almost $7,000. And they are offering us tickets at, again, maybe like 20% the cost. So incredible, and a few free here and there. So I think one or two that we're going to be doing lottery for free tickets as well. So each one has a different kind of ask and offering. So please, again, take advantage of those. For the summit, make sure that everybody has saved the date and I'm hoping everybody here has already registered for the summit. That will be, of course, on January 5th, the day that Legion World begins. So we will be like a launch party per se that starts with us. And then once we're over, it will walk everybody right over to the main registration booth of Legion World. So right now we've got signage that is being prepared. Make sure you save your spot. We've already got, again, over 45 people that have already registered to attend. And we're just starting to put out our own social media pieces. So extremely, extremely excited about that. We're expecting probably, 100, maybe a little bit north of 100 people just to be registered. And then, of course, as long as they are registered for Legion World and they get there early, we have no problems accepting them into the summit as well. So we're excited about it. We've got a full agenda signed up. We're still getting, I think, one or two more guest speakers to come in. And they're not just regular speakers. These are actually more facilitators of the experiences that we will actually be presenting at the summit. So extremely exciting. We also have it where we've got some sponsors that are helping us to, again, make sure that Mike doesn't have to take care of, he's already been great with us at Legion World, taking care of quite a few different, but we're making sure that we're being supplemented as well by, the Tillman Consulting Group. Thank you, Matt. Again, Focus Quest, Babadoo, Leadspedia, and the list goes on. We've got actually two more to be added in here shortly as well. So does anybody have any questions about the summit so far? Any questions? So one of the things that I want to do here is, Mariano, can I give over to you the screen? I would love for you to be able to show some of the things that we're doing to further promote the virtual summit.
Sure. Here.
Okay. And it's great because, again, the creative piece, you'll notice that some people, again, if you're familiar with our colors, you'll notice that for the summit, what we did was we decided to add in a little bit of orange. So a slightly different color, but just something that gives it a little bit more spice to it. So on the screen that you can see right now, we actually have it where we've got, again, this shows us some of our speakers of the experiences. And so you'll have it where we'll be posting some of these are all posts pretty much across the board. Of that, we have more speakers coming. We also have it now in the first line. The second line is some of the promo pieces that we'll be putting out there on social media as well, further promoting the summit. So you'll see these things on Instagram and LinkedIn and everything you could think of. Please, when you see it, I'm hoping that you're following everything that we're doing online. But when you do see it, please like it, repost it. We also have it where you'll see the very bottom post that says, I am attending. What we're going to do is we're going to send those out via email, so that everybody who is registered has the ability to put their name directly into that post and send that out so people are aware. Mariano just dropped it into the chat. So if you don't have it, please grab it from the chat and you can just superimpose. I think I tried to help a few of you out that already had your picture. I think I already sent it out. So please, again, post it out there. Let the world know. Again, they are following you. So 𝗟𝗲𝗁, the world wants to know where 𝗟𝗲𝗁 is. Again, Chad, the world wants to know where you are as well. Let's let them know where you'll be on January 5th. And then if you guys look all the way to the far right, just to kind of give you a feel for, again, the agenda. I know it's very, very small. If you're really interested, we can send that out. Actually, this is actually on the website, I think, as well. So we actually have an area on the website that is actually labeled, BiPM Summit 2025. You can see the full agenda, and keep in mind, it's still evolving. Again, with the sponsors, again, along with, just the overall agenda, but this gives you a good feel for what we're looking at. Any questions so far? Perfect. Mariano, do we have any other material that we wanted to share with them?
No, these are the main ones.
The main ones? Perfect. Thank you very much. I'll share my screen now. Thank you. And so now that we have that, and so this is also, as far as goes, sponsors. Again, we know that a lot of you know a lot of different companies, a lot of you are part of companies as well. What we've done is we come up with particular promos that we can actually send out to potential sponsors as well. So reaching out to quite a few, I think I've got probably about 4 to 5 phone calls for next week before Thanksgiving. Our goal here is that we would love to have about 10 or so, and I think we're going to get to that number, but we definitely need help. So if you know anybody who wants to be a part of our initial summit, please reach out to myself or to 𝗟𝗲𝗁, who serves, of course, as our official liaison, and we can sit back and make sure that we provide room for them in the sponsorship. So we've got several packages that we can offer to them and kind of go from there. And with that in mind, actually, was there any questions at all in regards to the summit? I hope everybody's registered, again, across the board. Any questions at all? So for today, wanted to talk a little bit about, and this kind of goes into what Mike is going to be talking about in the 1 o'clock hour, which again, the climate overall is a little different. Initially, we were going to actually have a speaker come in today, but I wanted to make sure that we opened the floor to sit back and figure out again exactly, how is everybody being affected? TCPA is one thing. The one-to-one consent, we understand, is a big factor for us in the lead gen world. But overall, there's, post-election, there's some people who are extremely happy because their one thing was met, and there's some people who are extremely unhappy. I and myself, again, as a Black man, I'm sitting back and I'm looking at the climate of Black women who, again, ultimately have voted 90% plus for whoever they said they were going to vote for in regards to in making sure that they kept the larger picture and community kind of again at mind. And so I applaud them first and foremost. However, there are some people who are just not there's some people who are extremely happy and some people who are not. I would love to open the floor to kind of get feedback on what are overall your thoughts. How do you believe things might change individually within your company? Again, within your household. Again, and if anybody wants to speak to it in a general fashion, please feel free to do so. but would love to get more feedback. This is, in essence, there's no judgment. This is a safe place. Again, me and Chad have already been talking about this a lot back and forth. Again, no judgment. But anybody want to share anything?
Hey, Sean, well, I will give uh, a local political perspective, given that, my wife just fortunately won her reelection on the
Congrats.
city council in our community. But what I will say is that it was not easy, right? It was probably one of the more challenging things that we had to do. And that was because of the divisiveness and the division of the overall country, right? This goes all the way down to local levels. And I think it's even more polarizing the smaller the community that you deal with. And so we had to come up with a very creative way around, getting support for a Black woman that was very different than what we ever had to deal with before. So 2020, she ran for and was seated in 2020. That was on the heels of the murder of George Floyd. Racial tension was at its highest point, and I think that there was significant sensitivity going on, at least in our community during that time. Fast forward 4 years from now, when I think that the tenor of the country changed once control changed back in 2020. 4 years later, we're now looking at a different change, going back to something that was the norm back then. And so the climate was somewhat different. And what was fascinating is that race was not necessarily an issue, as no one really talked about race. But what it was more about was there were 3 seats in my wife's election. There were 4 candidates running, and it was literally 3-on-1. So they were trying to come together as a group to win her seat as well as the other 2, and then have kind of full control over the council. And what we had to do, and what I think she brilliantly did with her support team, is came up with this notion of just Holly, right? So only vote for one person. Because really what it came down to is that there's this difference in opinions that we just couldn't get over. I mean, again, the divisive nature of the country. You've got 2 different mindsets, and in this case, it was 3 with one mindset versus 1 with their own mindset. And so she came in second overall. The person that came in first is related to one of the police officers in our town. So there was name recognition. The police officer is actually a junior. So dad has the same name as the son. And then the person that came in third was an incumbent, and he's actually the current mayor, but he only won by, at this point, it's looking like by about 20 votes separated him from being unseated for that position. And the person in fourth just was a very negative person, and as far as I'm concerned, kind of, I think that was the right place there. So what I'm getting at is that, while we're dealing with a divisive country and these changes that are going on in the world that we live in today, we all still have to live within the world that we're in, right? We can't change what's happened. You can either support the change and embrace it, or you can spend the next 4 years like kind of challenged with trying to figure out how are you going to navigate what's in front of you. My wife has a very difficult uphill battle, at least for the next 2 years, because the way the council is situated, it's literally 4 against 1. Similar to kind of how we may feel today, it's another party against us, right? And it's hard to swallow, it's hard to fathom. But I think at the end of the day, we need to stay together as a community of potentially like-minded people in order to continue to move our agendas forward and our goals as individuals forward. And collectively, we can continue to do great things in this industry, in the country, in the world that we live in. Otherwise, what we will end up doing is really causing more harm than good. Because many of the programs and things that we've put together collectively can easily go away, right? This is the time that we really need to come together and make sure that we are a unified force. And especially in an organization like Blacks in Performance Marketing, we have to continue pushing the movement forward and make sure that our voice continues to be heard. Because otherwise, we'll be marginalized and it will be lost in the shuffle. So, I know my wife will probably see this, but I can't express just my gratitude to her for continuing to push forward, even when times seemed so difficult and she was not going to be able to do it. And I think that we just always have to keep in mind, keep pushing forward.
Thank you so much for sharing that personal experience. If anybody has seen the newsletter for Blacks in Performance Marketing or all the others, that's a point that we actually brought up as well as far as moving forward. Again, there's going to be some potential major wins within the new administration by far. I think, and I've talked to a few people about this, is that I was more concerned about the individuals who don't know, who don't have the separation between the poor and the rich. Again, that gap in my opinion, becomes wider and wider and wider. And so while, me and my family will be in essence fine, I'm more concerned about the overall community. And again, and as a Black man who has, came from nothing, I am always concerned about reaching back to be able to pull others up. So the community, as you mentioned, is important. The fact of building, I'm not saying that all the structures that we've had in mind that we have right now that are existing are ideal. Some of them need to be redone. However, just the thought of tearing them completely down, it's easy to destroy something. It's a lot harder to build something up from scratch. And so I'm really hoping that overall that we find some middle ground so that a lot more people can win and not just a few. And regardless of it making all perfect sense per se now, not everybody has the capacity to be able to navigate through it. I was talking to one of my larger clients, education clients, and they talked about the fact of, Sean, you know what? Don't plan any big trips, save some money because we don't know. I mean, if the Department of Education goes away, are we talking about no more Title I? Are we talking about Title IV being, kaput? I mean, what does that do? So for those individuals who have the money to go to school, they're fine. For those individuals who need help, again, and remember, I'm not saying that the structure was perfect by far. However, drastic moves leads to drastic results. And what is that going to mean overall? So that's kind of like my take on it. So, but again, I can always see some positives, but there's also things that I think that I question across the board for the community. Andrea?
Thank you for that. And sorry, I had to step away, but I'm back because I passionately wanted to comment, and thank you for giving us the platform to talk about it. So I'm not in the marketing space per se, but I did want to comment as a financial professional. And I'll start with your point about the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and especially the gap in wealth between Blacks and other ethnic groups. 𝗀𝗱𝗁𝗀𝗃 Some of you may or may not know her, at least by name, but let's describe her as a social justice investment professional. She posted a love letter, a post-election love letter to the social justice investment community. And in it, she talks about exactly that. This was a election largely, her belief that largely centered around those who are struggling and looking for hope. And she points it out this way by saying someone who is poor or in poverty is, I forget what the statistic is, how many more times likely they are to buy a lottery ticket because they're looking for hope or some type of change. And so some of the supporters of the candidate that won were just looking for something different, because it's not really so much about blaming who did what or who didn't do what. It's just like, hey, whatever has been happening isn't working for me, so I'm gonna buy a lottery ticket and purchase or vote for the candidate that I think will offer something different. And she spoke about it from the perspective of having been poor. But more broadly than that, I wanted to take a minute to address some myths or some false narratives that are out there. Sean, I know we talked about this personally, so I'm not going to out you per se, but there is a belief out there that the American economy does better under Republican leadership. There are non-Republicans who believe that, when in fact, the American economy does better over the long term with a balanced government. One that's not where there may be Democratic or Republican control of the House or Senate, but there's a different candidate in the White House. History has shown us that. History has also shown us that regardless of who wins the presidential election, the markets tend to rally right after the election. We certainly experienced that last week. Without going too deeply into who I supported, which I don't think will be a question, I had to put my big girl panties on and just say, hey, listen, the market's rallying. If I have clients with cash, I need to deploy that money so that they participate in that. What we can expect is less regulation, which increases opportunities for mergers and acquisitions. So entrepreneurs out there might be excited about what could come. But we do expect some downswings in the bond market. And bonds are not exciting, bonds are not sexy, but bonds have a job to do. They pay you a set amount of fixed income. They're not volatile, but they are important to an investor's portfolio. My personal advice, which we offer on my firm, hosts a weekly podcast. I'm one of the co-hosts. We always end with advice, is never adjust your investment strategy based on your emotions or your feelings. It's really about making sure your goals are intact and you're clear about that. Focus on the things you can control and not the things that you cannot. So I just kind of wanted to share that a little bit. I could go on if I got into the personal side, but you know, I'm happy to share. If I can quickly do it in the chat, I will. A link to 𝗟𝗲𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁's love letter, a link to our podcast if you're interested, and I can email out at a later time some historical data about how the economy has performed after an election.
Thank you so very much. Because I know Mike is going to have the a mic in just a few minutes again to talk about a lot of the stuff in regards to the TCPA and one-to-one consent. Ian, Eric, Sarah, I would love to be able to put any one of you guys on the spot, if you don't mind, just to tell us all a little bit about what is the overall climate in regards to the industry based off of the new, new policies that could be coming. We've been already told that things, the one-to-one consent, put it on hold based on what Ted Cruz said yesterday or the day before. Like, what are your clients telling you overall right now? Just curious.
I mean, that's not what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is that because the one-to-one consent thing is already law, it may not be implemented law, but that the pencils down doesn't actually apply to it. But I guess we'll we'll hear more in our next session. Yeah, I mean, certainly I hear a lot of people, kind of celebrating the idea that, regulation is going to go away, though two responses to that. One, the only bipartisan issue in the United States right now is the fact that everybody hates robocalls. And so I don't know that we can really count on, regulation of our particular industry letting up. That certainly wasn't the case during the previous Trump administration. It changed, but there was certainly, just as much pressure then as we felt lately. And then, the second thing, the more emotional thing for me is, I get really sickened when I hear people, saying, oh, but it's going to be so much better for our, portfolio. It's going to be so much better for our business. And on the backs of the number of people that are going to be hurt and vilified and the number of lives that are going to be destroyed over the next 4 years, it really, I'm pretty angry at the moment about the results of things. So, yeah, I think we'll hear more about what people think is going to happen with performance marketing. But I'm in a pretty dark place personally.
And Eric, thank you so much for sharing. I was wondering, I'm not sure if Ian or Sarah want to, or even Arvel, you want to chime in regards to the Department of Education. Again, I know you guys deal a lot with, some educational schools as well. What has been your take in that regards, if you wanted to state anything? Maybe. No.
From I guess I'll share more on personally, obviously not from a LeadsCon perspective, just my independent thoughts are, without oversharing, certainly not, I wasn't, I was on the side of the fence that wasn't really happy with the outcome. But living in New York City, it was somewhat, I could see it happening because it looked like I was speaking with a lot more people, including some, good friends, lifelong friends of mine, that were indicating that they were going to support Trump or vote for Trump, which was, it was, it's kind of tough to balance, but I do think, with the election in the rear view, I think kind of tolerance just has to be kind of, preached more than ever. For marginalized populations and groups, and also for just we have to kind of find ways to make room for one another and other thoughts. I just can't shut off all of my friends and family and other people that voted for the other side. I can't just turn a switch, and I don't think, to shut them out of my life, and I don't think that's conducive. And I think a lot of that is how we kind of only makes it more extreme, people's thoughts more extreme. So that's, those are just kind of my thoughts on the election, or I hope that we find a way to come kind of a little bit back to the middle, and have some real progressive conversations. And that's just clearly lost right now in this environment.
We appreciate that, Ian. Thank you so much for sharing. Chad?
I'm just going to give kind of a devil's advocate take that's aligned with my personal belief. We have marched and we have platformed around change, and what that typically means from a minority standpoint is more access, more equality, and things down that pathway. But I'm, as a contrarian by nature, I love all change. And the more extreme that change is, the more growth that comes from it. And that's not comfortable for a lot of people, because we want change when it immediately benefits us, right? And it's like, go do anything worth doing, having, or accomplishing, and let me know when that change was easy, right? Let me know when that change didn't come with pain and stress and hardship and difficulty, but you came out on the other side of it better because of it, right? And the idea of, we want to live, I imagine, you know, it's raining here and it's gray and it's drizzly today, and people, you know, it's scientifically been known to be more depressed when it's raining and gray for long periods of time. And it's like, okay, well, if that's like 40% of the time, you're now sad and depressed 40% of the time. And I think kind of politically the exact same way. We know how these pendulums swing back and forth from moderately, extremely, etc. And yet we get pulled viscerally around these things that at the end of the day are outside the control, outside of the things that we can directly control, our vote, how we go out there and engage others and share information, and the things that we do to create engagement within the communities that we have reached to. And so I say that because I am completely indifferent around the overarching of the change. My job, my only job, and we've all heard it before, and we say it so contritely, to accept the things that I cannot change, have the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And yet we will kick against the goads, as Shakespeare said in Julius Caesar, changing absolutely nothing and just frustrating ourselves instead of focusing on those three things: what I can change, changing what I can, and knowing which is or which. And so I go into this completely focused around, what are the things that I can affect? How can I affect those things, and how can I make it as positively engaging and successful for myself and everyone that I can touch and get my arms around in some way, form, or fashion, for the areas where I have the ability to do as much. That uncomfort piece, and I'm done. We go, we work out, we exercise, we run marathons, we do, Mike, we do Ironman, right? And they hurt in a gazillion different ways. And we create the body, the nutrition, the health, or whatever, from how hard we're willing to go through the difficult points to come out on the other side. And so, you know, I know that we're all going to be better as a nation somewhere downstream, because of what we learn, and because of the polarization, and because of the friction, and because of the uncomfort and the pulling and the tearing that's going to happen to the fabric of what we understand America to be, that are going to allow us to reconstitute this new narrative around where we as a country want this country to go, individually and collectively. And so I actually am going into this with probably the most energetic excitement around knowing that change is truly, truly here. Better, worse, good, bad, indifferent, everything. And so I've got to have my head on a swivel. I've got to be engaged. I've got to be participating, so that I'm not sitting apathetically on my hands, watching as the change happens around me and affects those that I love, care for, and the country that I'm a part of. That's my.
In chat, thank you so much for that perspective. Again, I love that. Before we depart, we got 5 minutes before I want to let everybody go a little bit earlier, but we wanted to provide a platform today that everybody could kind of hear from each other, along with allowing everybody to kind of speak their truth, which I think is important. Again, because hopefully when you hear other people's perspectives, it will help shape and guide you through what you want and what you need as well, which is, you know, again, which becomes ideal, because we're going to set a tone. Ultimately, Blacks in Performance Marketing, we named it just that because we wanted a bold name. Second to that, we wanted to make sure that we found a way to make a difference, to encourage other individuals who are, you know, who look like us, who were, again, open-minded to come into the industry. And then when they got into the industry, to feel comfortable within the industry. So in essence, even that change that Chad was talking about, we are part of that change. We are an organization that has now been around for what, almost 4 years now, that never existed before. This industry has been around for a very, very long time. And now we are part of the change of the last 3 to 4 years. And our goal here is to get bigger, better, stronger, to be able to make people feel that much more comfortable. And so even having the summit that we'll have in January, you're talking about a change where we're going to be talking about experiences, not just, these are not just speakers, these are facilitators talking about, again, what does our world look like? What can we do to make sure that we are being the best humans that we can possibly be for each other, again, across the board. So please, again, everyone, for those who need to heal, please, again, know that you're not alone. For those who are encouraged by the change, know that, guess what? You too are not alone. America has spoken. America has told us exactly what and who it is. And so with that in mind, we need to make sure that, again, if it's our part to make sure that those voices that have not been heard get an opportunity to come to the table and be heard, then so be it. Right now, we know just from the group of individuals who attend our meetings each and every month, we know that this is a platform that a bunch of us actually have a chance to speak out, because in essence, we become and we are the leaders thereof. And for others who might be a little bit more shy, who have a voice but just don't let us hear it, we speak for them as well. So again, thank you, everyone. Again, I want to say in conclusion, we are excited about seeing you guys here this month. Again, starting next month, we're going to go back to some of our speakers so that we can learn some more stuff. But today was a little bit more about healing, about the fact of just understanding where we all stand from all different perspectives, which is important because healing is critical, critical by far. And again, critical thinking, all that good stuff, and Dollar can speak to that left and right. But again, let's learn a little bit more, see what's going on in the industry. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being a part of today's call. If you have any questions, concerns, please feel free to reach out. And what I also say is that sometimes have the one-to-ones. If you want to sit back and want to know exactly how somebody is feeling, call them. Don't make any assumptions. Call them and speak the truth without judgment and go from there. I'm hoping that I'll see a bunch of you guys on the call with Mike Faree and Eric Trotman at 1 o'clock. Outside of that, before we depart, does anybody have any closing comments? We got just 2 minutes. Questions, comments? We're good? Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, everyone, thank you so much. I hope I've really spoken everybody's name. Outside of that, you guys have an incredible day. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you too.